welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be all about the new Lunar Beauty Life's a Drag Facelift palette. This palette retails for $48 and there are 21 shades. It's the updated new version of Manny's first palette, Life's a Drag, which came out 3 years ago. This palette is extended, so it has all of the original 14 shades. And then he also added 7 new shades and shrunk down the palette sizes so it's all in the same price point. We have 9 matte neutral shades and then 3 shimmer shades. This shade right here, Full Fantasy, is more like a glitter topper. It's what I have on my lower lash line on top of a blue shade. And then we have 9 matte colorful shades. So we basically have kind of every color you can think of in this palette, but it is mainly a matte palette, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. I did get the original Life's a Drag palette when it came out 3 years ago, and I don't use a lot of colorful shadows too often, so I ended up passing it along to my friend who's a makeup artist who could definitely get more use out of it, but I figured I would probably use this palette a bit more since there is quite a bit more variety than the original palette. I felt like it was way too colorful for me, but with all of the neutrals in this palette, it makes it more easier for me to use for day-to-day looks. Like, I will honestly use all of this a lot more than the rest of these shades, but you guys can see today I did use a ton of colorful shades. I basically used about half the palette on my eyes today, and I do really like that we're getting an extension of basically the first palette, but with more transition shades, more variety. That way, if you are like me, you don't wear a lot of color, you have a lot of more variety in the transitions to make the color work without just committing to like a solid full-blown pink or purple eyeshadow look. You can do what I do today, combine a bunch of shades together. You just have a lot more variety with the transition shades and different color combinations, so you don't have to get overly creative if you wanted more like of a simple, colorful look. So you get a lot of variety in here. I do wish we had some more shimmers. That's my comfort zone for sure, but I understand the theme of the palette and this is definitely pushing me outside of my comfort zone. So I'm gonna go ahead right into the tutorial so you guys can see how I used about half of this palette on my eyes today. So I'm gonna be using a blend of neutral and colorful shades so I can show you some variety in the palette. I'm gonna start off with this neutral shade, Sickening, and this is kind of like a warm tone, medium brown. Has like a little orangey hint to it. This is kind of my go-to transition shade. And I typically don't do too many colorful looks. This palette's a bit out of my comfort zone. But when I do color, I try to stick to still like a neutral transition shade and then build off of that. I feel like it's a little bit easier for me to blend. And this is probably the shade I'll start most looks with in this palette because it goes with all of the neutrals and it's just warm enough to go with like all of the purple and pink tones too. So next I'm going in with this burgundy purple shade in my outer corner. I feel like this is a good neutral transition shade that can lead us into all of the colorful pink and purple tones. So I'm just gonna go in a little bit lightly to build up that outer corner. And I'll go ahead and carry that through my crease just a little bit to add a little bit more dimension. And then I'm gonna take the shade Beat on a wet brush. I'm just gonna pack that onto my lid. This is probably my favorite shade in the palette. I always love shimmers, and I tend to go for like that rose gold kind of shimmer shade. So now I'm gonna add in this pink shade and I'm gonna put it in my outer corner. I might go in with my fingertip as well, but I just wanna get it on a little bit more precisely. It's honestly probably been like a year since I've done a colorful eyeshadow look. I've been doing really basic eyeshadow looks, so I used to do color quite a bit, especially during the summers. So I think this palette will help me kind of get back into it. And then I'm gonna take this shade Kiki and I'm gonna apply that in my inner corner. I used to do a look with this with the original Life's a Drag palette. I just really like that kind of like cotton candy effect. And I just kind of swoop that into my inner corner. And I just leave whatever on my brush and kind of diffuse it into my crease and onto my lid to just help it transition a little bit better. Just adding on some mascara to get a feel for everything, just to see how I want to finish out my lower lash line. I'm just adding the shade Sickening to my lower lash line. I just like to start off with the neutrals. And I'm also going to use a tiny bit of this shade Fishy. I'm just going to put that in the inner corner of my lower lash line. It's a little bit of a satin shade, so it will kind of soften up the lower lash line a little bit. All right, I just added some mascara and I'm really liking all of this color. I definitely want to do a brow highlight. I actually need to clean up my brows a little bit and go with a lighter lip color. I'm gonna finish that all up, put on some lashes, and then I'll give you all of my final thoughts about the palette. All right, so this is the final look with the palette. I realized when I was doing my eyeshadow that I never set my brows, and that's why the makeup was just looking a little bit weird to me. Like, I love a fluffy brow, and I feel like that kind of help set the rest of the eyeshadow look. I will say off camera, I did go in with the shade Full Fantasy, and I just applied that underneath the blue on my lower lash line, and I feel like that added a lot to this look because I didn't want it to get a little too harsh, and I feel like it added some softness and just like a little bit of a different finish to it. And I just took my highlighter. I'm wearing the new Makeup by Mario highlighter in golden, and I just added that to my inner corner to soften up the look. Anytime I do more of a colorful eyeshadow look, I love to add a brow bone highlight and inner corner highlight just so it's all like seamless and more diffused and not too harsh. So I definitely think that helps complete the look, and I will link the rest of the makeup I'm wearing down below as well. But overall, this was actually a really easy look to do considering how many colorful shades I used. I find that a lot of the colors in here are really easy to blend out. I've tried a couple different looks with this palette just to get a feel for it. And definitely I'm gonna be using all of the neutrals a ton, but I think if you want something that's like incorporating some pop of color without having to commit to a full like navy eyeshadow look, bright green, this is a great palette for that because you can get a little bit out of your comfort zone or go full into just a full colorful shade. I know for sure for day to day, I'm gonna use just this half of this palette, but you have a lot of nice variety in here, and I love the purple shades in this palette. The one shade I had a little bit of a hard time with on a different look that I did previously is the shade Fishy, just because I expected it to be a little bit creamier. It is more of like a satin shade. Like, it is matte, but it has a little bit of a satin finish to it, and I kind of wish it was a shimmer, honestly. I prefer shimmery blue, but I do wish that it had just like a little bit more of a satin when you do blend it out, because as you can see, it really just turns into a matte blue. So in the pan, it does have a little bit of a satin finish to it, but once you blend it, it really just turns into a matte. So I kind of wish we had a colorful shade that wasn't matte, that had a little bit of a different finish to it. I think that would add some more variety to the palette. But I think basically the theme of the palette is to have all of those matte shades. And to me, those are more difficult to work with. So I don't find this to be the most beginner-friendly palette, but if you're just getting into colors and you want to like dip into them while still having some more neutral tones, this is great for that, especially compared to the first palette because you have a lot more variety, a lot more transition shades in both the neutrals and the colorful shades. I think for sure if you like colorful palettes, you will definitely like this palette because I was actually really impressed with how pigmented the colorful shades are in this palette. Like this color correct, this orange shade and this yellow shade, a lot of times colors like this in colorful palettes, they end up being very muted, but these actually show up really pigmented and really nicely. They're definitely a lot more pigmented than some other colorful palettes I've had in the past. So definitely, if you like color, you will definitely like this palette. If you're trying to get into color, I think you'll really like this palette. But if you're somebody who really just sticks to neutrals and just wants like maybe a pop of color or two, this is probably a little too colorful, especially because we only have a few shimmer shades, so you really have to commit to making like more dramatic looks with some of the colorful shades in this palette. So just keep that in mind. If you love shimmers and neutrals, maybe this isn't the palette for you, but if you love colorful looks, I think this will be the palette for you. So those are all of my thoughts on the new Lunar Beauty Life's a Drag Facelift palette. Definitely, if you like colorful shadows, I think you'll really like this palette. The formula is awesome. It really just depends on your eyeshadow color preferences and formula preferences, whether you prefer mattes or shimmers. But if you're just looking at the quality of the palette, I think this is awesome. Definitely an awesome palette for summer as well if you want to get into some more colorful looks. Let me know if you plan on purchasing this palette in the comments below. And if you guys like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'll talk to you guys soon in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.